You weren't meant to see the full picture right now, and that's exactly why it hurts. Because your mind is searching for certainty, while life is asking for faith. This pressure you feel isn't punishment. It's the weight of becoming someone you've never been before, and it's happening quietly, without applause. There are seasons where everything seems to slow down at once. Doors close, progress stalls, and even your own thoughts start turning against you. You begin to wonder if you made the wrong move, chose the wrong path, or believed in something that was never meant for you. That doubt feels real, but it's not the truth. What you're experiencing right now is something most people never understand until it's too late. They think the storm means they're losing, when in reality, it's the only place where real transformation can happen. Comfort never created strength. Ease never built endurance. This moment is doing something far deeper. Look closely at your life. This didn't start with the storm. It started the moment you decided you wanted more, the moment you refused to settle. That decision set something in motion, and now you've entered the phase where everything gets tested, not to destroy you, but to see if you're ready. And here's what makes this season so dangerous. It doesn't attack your abilities, it attacks your belief. It whispers that you're not good enough, that you're too late, that you should stop before you waste more time. If you listen long enough, it sounds convincing. That's how most people quietly give up. But there's another voice, quieter, harder to hear, but far more powerful. It tells you to hold on, to keep going, to trust that something is forming even if you can't see it yet. That voice doesn't shout, it waits. And only those who learn to listen to it make it through the storm unchanged. Most people expect progress to feel good. They think growth should look like momentum, like clarity, like things finally working out. But the truth is, the most important stages feel like confusion, like delay, like everything falling apart at once. That's where the real shift begins. Right now, you may feel like you're standing still, but you're not. There are parts of you being strengthened that don't show up on the surface. Your patience, your discipline, your ability to keep moving without recognition. These are the traits that determine everything later on. There's a principle most people never learn until they've already quit, that your results don't respond to your wishes. They respond to your persistence, not once, not twice, but consistently, especially when it feels pointless. That's where the separation happens between those who rise and those who fade. Think about how easy it would be to stop right now, to convince yourself that this is enough, that you've tried, that it didn't work, that maybe it's just not for you. That path is always available. But so is another one, the one where you decide that this moment doesn't define the end. Because the truth is, this storm is temporary. But what you become in it can last forever. The way you think, the way you respond, the way you carry yourself when things are uncertain, those things are being built right now. And they will either limit you later or carry you further than you imagined. You don't need everything to make sense right now. You don't need proof that it's working. You don't need anyone else to validate what you're doing. What you need is the decision, the quiet, firm decision that you will not break here. That no matter how long it takes, you're not turning back. Because something is waiting on the other side of this season, something that can't be rushed, can't be skipped, and can't be given to someone who isn't prepared for it. And preparation doesn't happen in comfort. It happens here, in uncertainty, in silence, in moments exactly like this. So if today feels heavy, if your mind is filled with questions and your heart feels tired, don't mistake that for failure. You're in the middle of something that's shaping you at a level most people never reach. And if you hold your ground just a little longer, everything can begin to shift. There are periods in a man's life that do not resemble progress, yet they are more important than any visible advancement he has known before. These periods do not announce themselves as opportunities. They arrive as pressure, as delay, as uncertainty. And because they do not look like growth, they are often resisted rather than understood. A man enters such a season without fully recognizing it. At first, it feels like a disruption. Plans do not unfold as expected. Effort does not produce the same return. Clarity, which once seemed present, begins to fade. And in its place, a question begins to form: why is this happening? This question, though natural, often leads him in the wrong direction, for it assumes that something has gone wrong, when in truth, something has begun. There is a distinction that must be understood. Not all pressure is a sign of opposition. Some pressure is a sign of formation. A man who decides to move beyond what is familiar, who refuses to remain where he has been, sets something into motion. And that motion brings him into a stage where what he has been is no longer sufficient for where he is going. This is where pressure appears, not to break him, but to reshape him. There are many individuals who experienced this stage and misunderstood it. They believed that because things became more difficult, they had made an error, that because progress slowed, they had chosen the wrong direction. And in this belief, they began to question their decision to move forward at all. Yet those who continued long enough came to see something different, that the pressure was not against them, it was upon them, shaping them. Consider the example of men such as Edison, who labored through countless attempts without visible success, or Ford, who faced repeated rejection before his vision took form. To those observing them in the early stages, it appeared as though they were failing, yet what was not seen was what was being formed within them: patience, endurance, the ability to continue without immediate reward. These qualities do not develop in ease. They are built in pressure. There is an affirmation that may be introduced at this stage: this pressure is shaping me into the man I must become. This statement does not remove the difficulty. It gives it meaning. It shifts the interpretation from resistance to preparation. As this awareness begins to develop, the man starts to observe his condition differently. He no longer sees every obstacle as something to be avoided. He begins to see them as part of a process that is refining him. This does not make the experience easy, but it makes it purposeful. There is also a change in how he responds to delay. He no longer assumes that because results are not visible, nothing is happening. He recognizes that some forms of progress occur beneath the surface, unseen yet essential. Others begin to notice this difference. They see a man who does not react in the same way when things become difficult. He does not collapse under pressure, nor does he withdraw at the first sign of delay. There is a steadiness in his actions that was not present before. This perception carries weight, for those who remain composed in uncertain conditions are often regarded as strong. They are seen as individuals who can be relied upon not only when things are favorable, but when they are not. There is also a change in how the individual experiences his own thoughts. They become less reactive, less driven by immediate circumstance. He begins to think with a longer view. He understands that what he is going through is not the final condition, but a stage within a larger process. It must be understood that this stage rarely brings recognition. There is no applause, no visible reward, no immediate confirmation that what is being endured will lead to something greater. And this is what makes it difficult. The man must continue without evidence. There may be moments where doubt returns, where the mind suggests that this pressure is unnecessary, that perhaps a different path would be easier. Yet the individual who has begun to understand does not allow these thoughts to determine his direction. He acknowledges them and continues. Over time, something begins to change, not outwardly at first, but inwardly. The man becomes more stable, more controlled, less affected by the fluctuations of circumstance. He develops a capacity that was not present before, the ability to carry pressure without losing direction. There are examples of individuals who, after passing through such seasons, were no longer the same, not because their circumstances changed immediately, but because they themselves had changed. They became stronger, more patient, more deliberate. Others often described them as resilient. Yet what they had gained was not simply resilience, it was formation. Thus, the season of pressure is revealed not as an interruption, but as a requirement. The man who understands this does not seek to escape it. He moves through it. He allows it to shape him. He accepts that what is being built cannot be rushed, and in doing so, he prepares himself for what lies ahead, not by wishing for easier conditions, but by becoming capable of carrying greater ones. For it is not in ease that a man is formed, but in the pressure that asks more of him than he has yet given. And the man who meets that pressure does not remain as he was. He becomes something stronger. There is a force that works against a man during difficult seasons, yet it does not appear in a form that can be easily recognized. It does not confront him openly, nor does it announce its presence with strength. Instead, it moves quietly, almost unnoticed, influencing his thoughts in subtle ways. And before he realizes it, it begins to change how he sees himself, his direction, and what is possible. This force does not attack his ability, it attacks his belief. For as long as a man believes, he will continue. The moment belief begins to weaken, his movement begins to slow. At first, this change is small. A single thought, a brief question. Perhaps this is not working. Perhaps I have gone too far. Perhaps this is not meant for me. These thoughts do not appear dangerous in isolation. They seem reasonable, even cautious. Yet their danger lies in repetition, for what is repeated begins to feel true. A man does not lose belief in a single moment. He loses it gradually, through allowing certain thoughts to return without challenge. There are many individuals who began with clear intention and strong conviction, yet over time found themselves questioning what they once believed firmly, not because their ability changed, not because their direction was wrong, but because their thinking shifted. They began to listen more to doubt than to purpose. Others observed them and saw no immediate decline. They still appeared capable, still intelligent, still aware. Yet something had changed beneath the surface. Their conviction had weakened. And without conviction, even the most capable man begins to hesitate. This is how most withdraw, not through failure, but through erosion of belief. There are examples of individuals who stood at the edge of success, yet turned back not because they could not continue, but because they no longer believed it was worth continuing. Their ability remained intact, their opportunity remained present, yet their belief had diminished. In contrast, there are those who come to understand that belief must be guarded with the same care as action. They do not allow every thought to take root. They recognize that the mind, when left without direction, will often repeat what weakens rather than what strengthens. Such individuals do not ignore doubt. They refuse to entertain it. There is an affirmation that supports this discipline. I guard my belief, for it determines my outcome. This statement establishes control over thought. It reminds the man that what he allows to remain within him will shape what he does. As this awareness develops, he begins to observe his thinking more closely. He notices when doubt appears, when hesitation begins to form, and when his attention shifts away from what he intends toward what he fears. He does not attempt to silence every thought. He selects which ones he will reinforce. This selection becomes his protection. There is also a shift in how he interprets his internal dialogue. He no longer assumes that every thought is valid. He recognizes that some thoughts are merely reflections of pressure, of fatigue, or of temporary uncertainty. And because he recognizes this, he does not accept them as truth. Others begin to notice this difference. They see a man who does not easily lose direction. He does not appear shaken by difficulty, nor does he speak in terms of defeat. There is a firmness in his thinking that reflects stability, even when conditions are not favorable. This perception carries strength, for those who maintain belief are often seen as strong-willed. They are regarded as individuals who do not collapse under pressure, who do not change direction with every challenge, and who continue even when the outcome is not guaranteed. There is also a change in how the individual experiences doubt itself. It becomes less powerful, less convincing. He begins to see it not as a signal to stop, but as something that must be managed. This is a critical distinction. For doubt, when unmanaged, expands. When observed and redirected, it diminishes. It must be understood that belief is not maintained through a single decision. It is maintained through repetition, through returning to it again and again, especially when it feels challenged. There may still be moments where doubt appears stronger than before, where the weight of the season presses heavily upon the mind, and where the thought of stopping becomes more frequent. Yet the individual who has gained awareness recognizes these moments. He does not allow them to remain. He replaces them. He returns to what he knows. Over time, this produces a powerful effect. Belief becomes stable, not because doubt disappears, but because it is no longer allowed to grow. There are examples of individuals who, By maintaining belief through prolonged difficulty, we're able to continue long enough to reach results that others never saw. They did not possess more knowledge. They did not have better conditions. They simply refused to allow their belief to weaken. Others often described them as determined. Yet what they were observing was protection of belief. Thus, the quiet attack that causes most men to withdraw is revealed. It is not external, it is internal. It is the gradual acceptance of thoughts that weaken direction. The man who understands this does not allow belief to fade. Without resistance, he guards it, he reinforces it. He chooses what he will repeat within himself, and in doing so, he maintains the one force that allows him to continue, even when everything around him suggests that he should stop. For it is not ability that determines whether a man will reach his destination. It is whether his belief remains intact long enough for him to get there. There is a stage in every man's journey that is more difficult than the beginning and more uncertain than the end. It is the stage where effort continues, yet results do not appear, where action is taken, yet nothing outward seems to change. And because there is no visible confirmation, the mind begins to question whether anything is happening at all. This stage is rarely understood. It does not resemble progress. It does not reward effort immediately. It does not provide evidence that movement is leading somewhere. And for this reason, many misinterpret it. They believe that because they cannot see advancement, none exists. Yet this belief is incomplete, for not all progress is visible in the moment it occurs. There are forms of development that take place beneath the surface, quietly, steadily, without recognition. A man may be changing in ways that are not yet reflected in his results. His thinking may be refining. His discipline may be strengthening. His ability to endure may be increasing. Yet none of this is immediately seen. This is the nature of unseen growth. It forms before it appears. There are many individuals who pass through this stage without recognizing its value. They continued for a time, expecting results to follow quickly. When they did not, doubt began to take hold. They questioned their direction, reconsidered their actions, and in many cases, slowed their movement. Not because they lacked effort, but because they lacked visible proof. Others observed them and saw little change. From the outside, it appeared as though they were remaining in the same position. Their work did not seem to produce immediate reward. Their progress was not easily measured, and so they were often described as stagnant. Yet this perception was not accurate, for beneath what could be seen, something was forming. There are examples of individuals who labored for extended periods without recognition, whose efforts did not produce immediate result, yet who later achieved outcomes that seemed sudden to those observing. What appeared to be an abrupt change was in truth the result of long, unseen accumulation. This is a principle that must be understood, that results often appear after the stage where most have already stopped. There is an affirmation that supports this awareness. Even when I do not see progress, I know it is forming. This statement does not rely on visible confirmation. It reinforces trust in the process itself. As this understanding develops, the man begins to interpret his situation differently. He no longer assumes that lack of visible result means lack of advancement. He recognizes that some forms of progress require time before they become apparent. This recognition creates patience, not passive waiting, but continued effort without immediate reward. There is also a shift in how he measures his movement. He no longer looks only at what is outwardly changing. He observes what is strengthening within, his ability to continue, his consistency, his control over his actions despite uncertainty. These become indicators of progress. Others begin to notice this difference. They see a man who does not become discouraged when results are delayed. He does not abandon his path when recognition is absent. He continues with a steadiness that reflects something deeper than temporary motivation. This perception carries strength. For those who persist without visible reward are often regarded as disciplined. They are seen as individuals who do not require immediate return to justify their effort. And through this, they begin to separate themselves from those who rely on constant reinforcement. There is also a change in how the individual experiences delay. It becomes less frustrating, less personal. He no longer sees it as a sign that something is wrong. He sees it as part of the process. This shift reduces resistance and allows him to continue without unnecessary doubt. It must be understood that unseen growth is often the most important kind, for it forms the foundation upon which visible results are later built. Without it, any success that appears quickly may not be sustained. The man who endures this stage builds something that lasts. There may still be moments where the absence of visible progress becomes difficult to accept, where the mind seeks confirmation and where the temptation to change direction arises. Yet the individual who has gained awareness recognizes these moments. He does not allow them to disrupt his course. He continues. Over time, something begins to change. What was once unseen begins to appear, not gradually, but often suddenly. Results begin to take form. Opportunities begin to emerge. Clarity begins to increase. And those who observe this change may believe that it happened quickly. Yet the man knows otherwise. He knows what was built in silence. There are examples of individuals who, after long periods of unseen effort, reached outcomes that seemed immediate to others. Their success appeared sudden, yet it was the result of sustained work that had gone unnoticed. Others often describe them as fortunate. Yet what they were observing was not chance, it was accumulation. Thus, the stage where progress becomes invisible is revealed not as a period of stagnation, but as a period of formation. The man who understands this does not require constant evidence to continue. He trusts that what he is building is taking shape. He continues his effort. He maintains his direction, and in doing so, he moves through a stage that causes many to turn back and positions himself to reach a point where everything begins to appear. For it is not always what is seen that determines progress, but what is being formed before it can be seen. There is a stage in a man's journey where the absence of response becomes more difficult to endure than the presence of difficulty itself. He continues to act, continues to apply effort, yet what once returned encouragement, recognition, or acknowledgement begins to fall silent. There is no applause, no reinforcement, no visible indication that what he is doing is being seen or valued. This silence tests more than effort. It tests independence. For many men are accustomed to moving forward with some form of response. A word of encouragement, a sign of progress, a visible result, these serve as confirmation that their direction is correct. They provide reassurance, and through that reassurance, continuation feels easier. Yet when this reinforcement is removed, something changes. The man continues, but with less emotional support. And in that condition, his reliance is revealed. There are many who, upon entering this stage, begin to slow, not because they lacked discipline, but because they were unknowingly dependent on response. They expected effort to be acknowledged, progress to be visible, and movement to be reinforced. When these expectations are not met, uncertainty begins to grow, and from that uncertainty, hesitation follows. Others observe them and see little difference at first. They are still capable, still active, still engaged. Yet, beneath the surface, something has shifted. Their drive has weakened, not because they cannot continue, but because they feel unseen. This is where many withdraw, not from lack of ability, but from lack of encouragement. In contrast, there are those who come to understand that true discipline is not sustained by recognition, it is sustained by decision. They recognize that if their movement depends on being seen, it will stop when attention fades. And so they develop a different foundation. They continue without requiring acknowledgement. There is an affirmation that supports this level of discipline. I continue without needing to be seen or praised. This statement removes dependence on external response. It reinforces that action is a result of commitment, not reward. As this awareness develops, the man begins to observe his own expectations more closely. He notices when he looks for validation, when he seeks acknowledgement, and when he feels discouraged by its absence. He begins to recognize that these expectations, though natural, can weaken his ability to continue. This recognition creates a shift. He begins to act without waiting for response, not because he no longer values it, but because he no longer depends on it. There is also a change in how he experiences effort. It becomes quieter, more internal, less tied to what others see. He no longer measures his progress by recognition. He measures it by consistency. Others begin to notice this difference. They see a man who continues, even when nothing is returned to him. He does not require encouragement to act, nor does he withdraw when recognition is absent. There is a steadiness in his behavior that reflects internal strength. This perception carries weight. For those who act without needing praise are often regarded as disciplined. They are seen as individuals who are self-directed, who do not rely on external conditions to maintain their course, and through this, they begin to earn respect. There is also a change in how the individual experiences silence. It becomes less uncomfortable, less discouraging. He no longer interprets it as absence of progress. He accepts it as part of the process. It must be understood that many of the most important stages of development occur without recognition. They happen in private, in moments where effort is applied without witness, and where growth takes place without acknowledgement. The man who requires constant response will struggle in these stages. The man who continues regardless will advance. There may still be moments where the desire for Encouragement returns, where the mind suggests that effort should be recognized and where the absence of response feels heavy. Yet the individual who has gained awareness recognizes these moments. He does not allow them to determine his movement. He continues. Over time, this produces a powerful transformation. The man becomes independent, not isolated, but self-sustaining. His ability to act no longer depends on what is given to him externally. It is generated from within. There are examples of individuals who worked for long periods without recognition, whose efforts were not immediately acknowledged, yet who continued regardless. When their results eventually became visible, others described them as disciplined or driven, yet what they had developed was independence. Others often saw only the result. They did not see the silence that preceded it. Thus, the discipline of continuing without encouragement is revealed as one of the most important forms of strength a man can develop. It frees him from reliance on conditions he cannot control and places his movement entirely within his own authority. The man who understands this does not wait to be encouraged. He acts. He does not require praise. He continues. He does not depend on recognition. He builds, and in doing so, he creates a consistency that cannot be easily disrupted, a form of discipline that remains steady, whether he is seen or unseen, for it. It is not the presence of encouragement that determines whether a man will continue, but the strength of his commitment to do so without it. There is a burden that tests a man more deeply than effort, more persistently than difficulty, and more quietly than failure. It is the burden of uncertainty, the condition of moving forward without knowing how or when things will unfold. It does not strike with force, but remains present, asking the same question again and again without offering an immediate answer. A man enters this stage gradually. At first, there is direction, there is purpose, there is movement. Yet as time passes and outcomes remain unclear, something begins to change. The path that once felt defined begins to blur. The steps that once felt certain begin to feel uncertain. And the man finds himself continuing, yet without the same clarity that once guided him. This is where many begin to struggle, not because they cannot act, but because they cannot see. And the mind, when it cannot see ahead, begins to create its own conclusions. It imagines delay as failure. It interprets uncertainty as error. It questions whether continuation is justified. There are many individuals who reach this point and allowed uncertainty to become a stopping force. They believe that if the outcome was not clear, the direction must be wrong. And so they withdrew not because they lacked strength, but because they could not tolerate the unknown. Others observed them and saw hesitation. They appeared thoughtful, cautious, yet beneath that caution was fear of uncertainty. In contrast, there are those who come to understand that uncertainty is not a sign to stop, it is a condition to be carried. They recognize that no meaningful path reveals itself fully at the beginning, and that the unknown is not an obstacle, but a part of movement itself. Such individuals do not attempt to remove uncertainty. They learn to walk with it. There is an affirmation that supports this strength. I move forward even when I cannot see the outcome. This statement does not deny the presence of the unknown. It removes its power to stop movement. As this awareness develops, the man begins to observe his response to uncertainty more closely. He notices when his thoughts begin to anticipate failure, when his attention shifts toward what might go wrong, and when hesitation begins to replace action.